Have you ever wondered why something that seems right in the moment can feel painfully wrong years later? Why decisions made in anger, frustration, or exhaustion often return as memories heavy with regret? We live in a world where walking away looks strong, where independence is praised more loudly than patience, and where starting over is marketed as freedom. But beneath the surface of empowerment posts and encouraging comments, a quieter truth is unfolding. Many modern women are silently regretting divorce, not because they are weak, but because the world never warned them about what comes after the papers are signed, after the friends stop checking in, after the excitement of a new beginning fades into the silence of reality. Divorce is simple on paper. A form, a signature, a door closed. Yet the emotional cost is far more complex. Psychology shows that losing a long-term partner triggers a grief response almost identical to bereavement. At first it feels like relief. No more arguments, no more compromises, no more feeling unheard. There's space to breathe again. She finally feels like she's choosing herself. People cheer her on, saying she deserves better, deserves peace, deserves happiness. For a while she believes it. She rebuilds routine. She sleeps diagonally in the bed. She buys things she once talked herself out of. She changes her wardrobe, her habits, maybe even her last name. The first months taste like freedom, but freedom without connection slowly begins to taste like loneliness. The nights grow longer. The home feels quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but hollow quiet. There's no voice calling her name, no footsteps in the hallway. No one to hold when the world feels heavy. She scrolls through social media and sees other couples not perfect but present. She remembers small things she never thought she would miss, a shared breakfast, a hand on her back, someone to say I'm proud of you. And suddenly she's confronted with a truth no one prepared her for. Independence is powerful, but partnership is meaningful. Success feels different when there's no one next to you to witness it. Achievements feel incomplete when there's no familiar voice saying, I knew you could do it. This isn't about blame, it's about perspective. Divorce solves problems, yes, but it also erases moments, memories, and a future that once existed. Modern society pushes the idea that leaving is always the answer, that starting fresh guarantees better. Yet deep inside, many women begin to ask themselves, was the problem truly unbearable or simply uncomfortable? Was the relationship broken beyond repair, or were expectations shaped by a culture that confuses perfection with happiness? Humans are wired for connection. Our hearts crave closeness, understanding, and commitment. And when those needs resurface long after the excitement fades, regret begins to whisper softly, not to shame, but to remind, stay here with me, because what follows is not judgment. It's clarity, it's insight. It's a perspective rarely spoken out loud. If you continue watching, you may see relationships, past or present, with new eyes. You may find the wisdom that regret teaches too late. And you might gain something priceless, the ability to understand love beyond the noise of modern culture, before it slips away. Freedom that once felt exhilarating can slowly transform into a quiet room where thoughts echo louder than ever. The same independence that once tasted sweet begins to carry a bitter aftertaste when there is no one to share life's victories or calm life's storms. She sits with herself, realizing she traded arguments for silence, routine for emptiness, and shared life for solitary nights. Friends who once said, "You'll be happier without him," have moved on with their own families, their own priorities, their own lives. Support that felt abundant in the beginning now feels distant. Not intentionally but naturally. People return to their worlds, and she is alone with her decision, her pride, her memories. The mind has a way of replaying old moments with new clarity. Arguments that felt unbearable now seem fixable. Words that cut deep now feel like wounded reactions rather than unforgivable attacks. Psychology reveals something powerful. When pain fades, memories soften. The mind protects itself by highlighting what was beautiful, what was comforting, what was familiar. She remembers laughter in the kitchen, long drives with music loud, the comfort of a familiar touch. This isn't weakness, it is human biology craving connection. Our nervous system is built for bonding, built for consistency, built for partnership. No matter how strong, independent, or brave a person becomes, the desire to be understood, held, and loved never disappears. She notices how reality has changed. Every responsibility is hers alone. Bills don't split themselves, groceries don't carry themselves. Emotional weight sits entirely on her shoulders. Decision fatigue grows heavier when there is no one to share life's pressures. She becomes stronger, yes, but strength without support often feels like survival, not joy. The world applauds independence, but no one explains how heavy it feels when you carry everything alone. Society glamorizes self-sufficiency, but stays silent about lonely dinners, medical emergencies, holidays spent in quiet rooms, and milestones celebrated with no shared heartbeat beside her. There comes a moment, sometimes years later, when she sits at the edge of her bed, aware that freedom cost more than she imagined, and she begins to ask questions she avoided before. Was my silence guarding my peace or building a wall? Were my expectations realistic or shaped by movies, captions, and highlight reels? Did I leave because love was dead or because effort felt tiring? These questions are not punishment, they are awakening. They reveal the truth hidden beneath empowerment slogans. Love is not always thrilling, but it is irreplaceably grounding. Humans don't regret leaving pain. They regret leaving potential. They regret leaving someone who may have been imperfect but present, someone who tried even if clumsily, someone who shared history, memories, and roots that take years to grow. And growth, real growth, often happens not by switching partners, but by learning to understand the one you have. The heart knows this long after the papers are signed. It speaks in the emptiness of a quiet home. It reminds her during celebrations with no hand to hold. It whispers when she sees another couple laughing over something simple. The message isn't to go back. It's to reflect deeply, to understand what love actually means, beyond frustration, to recognize that connection is rare, precious, and worth fighting for. Because regret is not loud, it doesn't scream. It arrives slowly through reflection, maturity, and awareness. And when it settles, it teaches a lesson many learn too late. Leaving is often easier than staying, but easier is not always better. She begins to feel the weight of life pressing harder than before, not in a dramatic crash, but in the subtle, everyday moments that people rarely discuss. When the sink leaks and there's no one else to call, when the car needs service and she must rearrange her entire day, when she comes home after a long shift, exhausted, and the house waits untouched, dishes in the sink, laundry unfolded, silence thicker than fatigue. She handles it because she must. She grows capable, responsible, self-reliant. Yet with every task she completes alone, she realizes something she once overlooked. Support, even imperfect support, is a form of love. And what once felt like compromise now looks like partnership. What once felt restrictive now resembles stability. Strength tastes different when it is optional, not mandatory. There are moments she looks around and thinks, I have everything I once asked for. Freedom, space, control. But everything feels heavier without someone to share the burden. Humans are social beings. Stress becomes more bearable when shared. Joy feels brighter when witnessed. Science shows that emotional connection lowers anxiety, strengthens resilience, and increases life satisfaction. She didn't know that losing a partner means losing a mirror. Someone who reflects your growth, someone who sees you through your seasons, someone who witnesses your life. Without that mirror, she sometimes struggles to recognize who she is becoming. Is she evolving or simply surviving? She notices the difference when she sees couples arguing lightly in public, not with resentment, but with familiarity. The kind of disagreement that comes from two lives intertwined, not two strangers crossing paths. She watches older couples holding hands, not because they are perfect, but because they endured storms together. She wonders if she misunderstood love. Maybe real love isn't constant excitement, but consistent presence. Maybe connection isn't spark, but safety. Maybe a relationship's value is measured not in flawless moments, but in shared resilience. She begins to understand something deeper. Walking away requires strength, yes, but staying requires a different kind of strength. The courage to communicate rather than shut down. The maturity to compromise instead of demand perfection. The empathy to understand instead of waiting to be understood. Growth inside a relationship happens slowly, quietly, through uncomfortable conversations and emotional vulnerability. But she never practiced these muscles long enough. Leaving felt easier than transforming. Ending felt quicker than rebuilding. And sometimes, fast decisions lead to lifelong reflection. When independence is no longer a novelty, it becomes a mirror that asks hard questions. She starts to see that conflict wasn't always cruelty. Sometimes it was two people hurting, unable to express needs without defense. Sometimes what she interpreted as lack of love was simply lack of skill. No one teaches emotional communication in school. No one hands us manuals for marriage. We learn through mistakes, patience, and time. The version of herself who left believed love should feel effortless. The version of herself who reflects now knows effort is part of love. And with that realization comes a subtle ache, not just for the person she left, but for the version of herself who didn't understand what she had. Regret doesn't slam the door, it knocks gently, reminding her that partnership is not the enemy of freedom. It is a foundation that makes freedom meaningful. It is a home for the heart. It is a witness to life. And once it's gone, she learns what no empowerment slogan ever mentioned. Building a life alone is possible, just far heavier than she imagined. Starting over sounds romantic in theory. New beginnings, fresh possibilities, a clean emotional slate. But reality is far less glamorous. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. Emotional intimacy isn't downloaded like an app. Connection isn't instant just because we hope it will be. She steps back into the dating world with a heart that carries history. Every conversation feels like an interview, every dinner like an evaluation. She smiles, she listens, she tries to open up, but deep down she compares without meaning to. She notices how no one laughs exactly like he did. How no one knows her morning moods. How no one understands her silence the way he once did. New people are new, and new requires adaptation, patience, vulnerability. The heart remembers comfort, familiarity, rhythm. And comfort isn't found in strangers, it is built through time, through conflict, through growth. She never realized how rare emotional history is until she had to start writing it again from page 1. It takes years to learn someone's love language. It takes years to build trust thick enough to lean on. It takes years to create inside jokes, shared memories, and a sense of home in another soul. Modern love culture praises moving on quickly, replacing rather than repairing, but anything quick rarely grows deep. Research shows that the brain attaches more strongly to old emotional bonds than new ones, which is why random songs, scents, and places awaken memories she thought she buried. Her heart doesn't miss perfection, it misses connection. It misses being known without explanation. It misses the comfort of not starting from scratch. Society often tells her, you'll find someone better, but better is subjective. Better doesn't always mean new. Better sometimes means healed, grown, matured. Sometimes better is the man who shared her past, not the stranger who has no part in it. But going back isn't always possible. Time changes people. Distance reshapes hearts. The life she imagined moving forward demands emotional energy she didn't know she would have to pay. Opening her heart again is no longer simple. Vulnerability feels risky, trust feels fragile, and love feels like a gamble rather than a promise. She protects herself more, but that protection sometimes becomes a cage. Walls meant to guard her end up isolating her. There's a moment she realizes that leaving solved temporary discomfort while creating long-term emptiness. She didn't just leave a man, she left a shared identity, a shared future, a shared life story. Healing alone takes strength, But healing with someone requires partnership, and partnership is what she walked away from. She starts to understand that love isn't about constant happiness, but about having someone to face unhappiness with. It's about building something bigger than frustration. It's about choosing each other through imperfections instead of abandoning the journey when the path gets steep. When she meets new men, she notices the difference. Some seek fun, not commitment. Some carry their own wounds. Some avoid emotional depth. She realizes that finding someone aligned with her soul, values, and vision is far harder than she believed. The idea of better options looks different when she's the one reintroducing herself, retelling her story, rebuilding trust she once had without effort. And quietly, without drama, the truth settles within her. Love lost is easier than love rebuilt. Connection abandoned is harder to recreate than to nurture. Starting over isn't always freedom. Sometimes it is a lifelong reminder of what she once had, but did not understand enough to keep. She begins to understand regret most deeply when she sees him become the man she always hoped he would be. Not because he owes her anything, but because time changes people. Pain matures them. Loss teaches them what presence never could. He becomes calmer, more responsible, more attentive, more emotionally aware. Maybe he starts taking care of his health, building his career, or treating relationships with more respect. She watches from a distance, sometimes directly, sometimes through mutual friends, sometimes through the filtered window of social media. And the thought she never expected pierces her quietly. Someone else may now receive the version of him she prayed for. She remembers moments she dismissed his effort because it didn't look perfect. Times he tried to show love in ways she didn't recognize. Words he spoke not to hurt, but out of his own frustration and unhealed wounds. She realizes that both of them were learning how to love while being imperfect humans. The younger version of her expected flawless communication, constant romance, unshakable emotional maturity, things even she couldn't offer consistently. It hits her that growth often happens after loss, not during comfort. Sometimes love doesn't end because two people don't care, it ends because neither knew how to care better. He moves on with life as she moves with hers, but the emotional weight is different. She thought he would always be there, emotionally, mentally, silently waiting for her return. But people evolve, wounds heal, new opportunities arise, and one day she sees him smiling, genuinely smiling, and her heart feels something unfamiliar. Not anger, not jealousy, but a deep awareness that she is no longer part of that joy. She once occupied chapters of his story. Now she is a footnote in his growth. The man she left learned lessons she only discovered afterward, and that recognition becomes a mirror, reflecting not what she lost but what she could have grown with. It's never the end of love that hurts most. It's the realization of what love could have become. She sees couples pushing shopping carts together, solving small problems side by side. She sees fathers picking up their kids, partners celebrating milestones, families laughing at simple things. And she wonders how different life might look if she stayed through the discomfort instead of escaping it. Growth is rarely linear. Sometimes two people need time, patience, accountability, communication, not separation. But separation became the path she chose before understanding what effort could have built. She isn't broken, but she is wiser. She isn't weak, but she sees strength differently. She realizes love isn't found in perfection but in presence, not in fantasy but in effort, not in replacing but in rebuilding. And that awareness, raw, heavy, transformative, settles in her heart with quiet clarity. Regret doesn't scream, it teaches. It reveals truths we overlook when we chase temporary relief over long-term fulfillment. As she watches him build a life without her, she understands something profound. Sometimes we don't regret who we lost. We regret who we were when we had them. She sits with these realizations, not to punish herself, but to finally see what society rarely teaches. Relationships break not only from betrayal or disrespect, but often from impatience, wounded pride, emotional immaturity, and expectations shaped by movies instead of reality. Modern culture praises exit over effort, independence over interdependence, self-love over mutual growth. And while loving yourself is vital, loving someone else requires sacrifice, compromise, and an understanding that no partner arrives fully shaped. We grow one another. We teach each other how to love. We evolve through conflict, not avoidance. Strength isn't walking away from difficulty. Strength is facing it with courage, communication, and compassion. No one talks about how many divorces are not rooted in violence, infidelity, or cruelty, but in misunderstanding. Two humans, hurt and defensive, waiting for the other to change first. Two people hoping for perfection yet unable to offer it themselves. When she left, she didn't just leave problems behind, she left the possibility of healing them. She realizes that sometimes the relationship didn't fail, the patience did. Sometimes communication ended before love did, and that truth becomes a quiet ache in her chest. Because regret is born when clarity arrives after the moment to act has passed, she begins to see relationships differently. She sees love as a choice, not just a feeling. Feelings rise and fall like waves, but commitment builds the shoreline that holds everything together. Real love demands presence in discomfort, not escape from it. It demands maturity to say, "Let's fix this," instead of, "I can do better alone." It demands forgiveness not as weakness but as wisdom, because two imperfect people must forgive each other endlessly to grow in a world that teaches them to give up quickly. Healing together is messy, awkward, vulnerable, but it builds depth that ease never will. Love survives not on good days, but on the days both choose each other despite struggle. If she could speak to her past self, she wouldn't say "don't leave." She would say, "Communicate, listen, grow, understand, be patient." Don't measure love only by comfort, measure it by willingness to build. She would whisper that the version of him she wanted was inside him all along. It just needed time, support, and belief. And she would remind herself that a relationship is not supposed to be perfect, it is supposed to evolve. Modern empowerment sometimes steals this truth. It convinces us that difficulty means incompatibility instead of opportunity, that friction means failure instead of growth. But connection deepens through repair, not replacement. The message isn't to undo choices or paint regret as destiny. It's to awaken awareness in those listening now, to make someone watching think twice before letting pride speak louder than love, to inspire someone to pause before walking away from a partner who is willing, imperfect, and growing. Because one day the loud noise of frustration fades, and what remains is memory. Memory of touch, of laughter, of presence, of someone who knew your heart when it was still learning how to beat in partnership. One day the pain of staying may seem small compared to the pain of losing what could have been extraordinary with patience. She learns that independence and connection are not enemies. You can be strong and still choose partnership. You can love yourself and still love another deeply. Real maturity is not choosing solitude because it's easier. It's choosing connection because it's meaningful. And as her reflection deepens, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Love does not require perfect people, only willing people. So she breathes deeply, finally ready to face what most avoid, the truth that relationships are masterpieces painted slowly, layer by layer, with patience, forgiveness, communication, and effort. Not every connection is meant to be saved, but so many are lost without ever being truly worked on. She realizes regret is not about the past, it's about the future she now walks into alone. And her story becomes a mirror for anyone listening, a moment to pause, reflect, and ask the questions she asked too late. Are you frustrated because love is broken, or because love is human? Are you walking away from a storm that will pass, or from a garden that needed watering? Are you choosing independence because you want peace, or because pride is louder than vulnerability? We often wait for perfection instead of building it. We expect connection to arrive fully formed instead of shaping it through understanding. But love, real love, is crafted, not discovered. You might be listening with your own questions, your own memories, your own unresolved conversations. Maybe you're holding anger, disappointment, or exhaustion. Maybe your heart feels heavy from trying. Maybe you feel unseen, unheard, unappreciated. But before you walk away, stop, breathe, look deeper. Most relationships don't need new people. They need new communication. They need honesty without defense, vulnerability without fear, accountability without blame. They need two people who choose growth over running, compassion over pride, effort over escape. Healing is uncomfortable, but so is loneliness. Growth is difficult, but so is regret. Choose your difficulty consciously, not emotionally. Decisions made in anger build futures made of emptiness, but choices made with clarity build lives rooted in meaning. Imagine looking at your partner not as a flaw or frustration, but as a human shaped by wounds, history, and upbringing, just like you. Imagine asking what they need instead of waiting for them to guess what you need. Imagine speaking from love instead of pain, listening from curiosity instead of defense. Small shifts create massive transformation, a soft tone instead of a sharp one, a question instead of accusation, a hug instead of silence. These are not weaknesses, they are emotional intelligence, and intelligence is what saves love when emotion wants to destroy it. If you are standing at the edge of a decision, let wisdom hold your hand. Ask yourself not only what you feel today, but what future version of you will feel living with the outcome. Regret teaches harshly, insight teaches gently. You don't have to learn the hard way. You can learn now through reflection, maturity, and awareness. You can decide to fight for love instead of fight inside love. You can become the partner you wish they were, and sometimes that inspires them to grow too. People rise where they feel safe, appreciated, and chosen. Love responds to effort. Connection responds to presence. Commitment responds to vulnerability. You only lose what you do not consciously nourish. And if you're listening with a relationship still alive, regardless of how fragile it feels, understand something powerful. You have what she misses, a chance to communicate instead of assume, to rebuild instead of replace, to choose love over ego, to create the future you will not regret. Don't let modern noise convince you that leaving is strength. Sometimes real strength is staying, healing, learning, evolving together. Let this message be a reminder, a wake-up call, a whisper to your heart. Don't wait for silence to teach you the value of presence. Don't wait for loss to reveal the beauty of what you have. Because love, once gone, is rarely replaced, only remembered.